A brand new tropical storm could form this weekend, and it could come close to Bermuda. At the same time, another disturbance is heading straight for the Caribbean, but it probably won't make it. What comes next could dramatically shift the entire tropical weather setup over the next couple weeks. In this video, I'll show you exactly what's happening with these developing systems and why the tropical weather pattern is about to change a lot. But first, if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button for more tropical weather updates. So here's a look at the tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. We have the last advisory has been issued on Hurricane Erin. Now it's a post-tropical cyclone with winds of 90 miles an hour, moving east-northeast at 33 miles per hour, being very quickly carried off in an easterly direction as a post-tropical cyclone. Then here are two disturbances to watch. So we have disturbance 1 with a 80% chance of formation over the next 48 hours and 90% chance over the next 7 days. This is Invest 90. So remember that name, Invest 90. That's one of the disturbances we'll be watching. It is showing some signs of organization about 250 miles northeast of the northern Leeward Islands. And the environmental conditions are favorable for development of this system. And they're saying a tropical storm is very likely to form this weekend as it moves in a northerly direction over the southwestern Atlantic, and interest in Bermuda should be watching because watches and warnings could be required tomorrow on Saturday. So this is expected to come very close to Bermuda, and it is expected to become a tropical storm. And then we have this other one, Invest 99, with a 30% chance of formation in the next 48 hours, a 40% chance in the next 7 days. It's pretty disorganized, and there's a chance that a short-lived tropical depression could form during the next day or so, but it's going to be moving into a less favorable environment on Saturday, and then it could start to get a little bit more favorable later this weekend or early next week as it approaches the Windward Islands. Now, if any of these get named, the next two names on the list for this season are Fernand and Gabrielle. Here's the current satellite imagery from Tropical Tidbits of Invest 90. There's a lot of showers and thunderstorms associated with it, but it's still somewhat disorganized, not looking like a tropical cyclone just yet, but it is expected to become a tropical system over the next couple days. Over the next 24 hours, it's expected to move kind of to the northwest before shifting to a more northerly direction. After 72 hours, it turns towards the northeast, but it is expected to, around 72 hours going into late Sunday, it is expected to make a close approach to the east of Bermuda. Yesterday, the GFS model was taking it directly over Bermuda pretty much, but now the forecast models are shifting east, keeping it from making a direct hit in Bermuda, but we'll have to see what happens because the track can still shift as it is a developing storm system. The intensity guidance brings it to a tropical storm within the next 24 to 36 hours before bringing it up to a very high-end tropical storm, possibly even a Category 1 hurricane within the next 2 to 4 days or so before it starts weakening down and actually becomes absorbed into a frontal system and becomes an extratropical cyclone. Here's the HAFS-A model kind of simulating what this could look like over the next few days. We have it turning into a tropical storm this weekend, and the HAFS-A model does take it to the east of Bermuda Sunday night into early Monday as a Category 1 hurricane, and then carries it off to the north and east, continuing on as a hurricane before it merges with a frontal system and becomes a non-tropical cyclone. But it is a very compact system, so if it stays a couple hundred miles to the east of Bermuda, they should be fine, but a small difference in the track could mean the difference between impacts or no impacts for Bermuda. So that'll be something to watch this weekend. Then here's the satellite imagery of Invest 99. It's also disorganized, even less organized than Invest 90, and it is in an environment with a decent amount of wind shear, not favorable for development. It is expected to move westward towards the Caribbean, and in about 3 days it should be near the Windward Islands, and then it could go further west into the western part of the Caribbean, but there's a lot of wind shear in this area, so no development is expected with that. After this point, it's not looking favorable at all, even though we do have some of the intensity guidance bringing it up to tropical storm intensity within the next 3 to 5 days. But if we take a look at the GFS model, we have Invest 90 right here. This is Invest 99. This is extratropical cyclone Erin. And notice what happens. We do have the GFS model showing a very weak tropical cyclone from Invest 90 going into tonight, into early on Saturday, and then it doesn't really strengthen much. It really stays as a tropical storm. This could be strengthening a little bit more than what the GFS is showing, but it will be a very compact system, so it could be hard for some of the global models to pick that up, especially since the hurricane guidance is showing a strong tropical storm or potentially a hurricane on Sunday going to Monday. But then notice what happens with Invest 99. It pretty much disappears, and there is a lot of wind shear that it's going into, so it's not expected to turn into much of anything. And then we have, after Invest 90 and 99, after those two disturbances, there's not really much happening in the tropics. You notice there's this huge area of high pressure. This massive Atlantic high pressure system takes over the entire Atlantic once again, bringing in a lot more stable conditions and higher sea level pressure in place, and a lot of stable conditions, which is going to pretty much shut down the tropical activity for at least a few days. And then it looks like things continue to stay quiet in the main development region, with even the intertropical convergence zone is suppressed again. So this is what was happening a few weeks back, and it looks like that could return going into the end of August and the beginning of September. But notice there's a lot more activity showing up in the eastern Pacific, and also the Central American Gyre region. So that could spin up something in the Gulf, in the Western Caribbean. The GFS is showing possibly a weak tropical storm going into September 4th, but we'll have to watch what's happening over there, and the Climate Prediction Center has an outlook for that we will get to. But here's the Euro AI model showing pretty much the same thing with Invest 90. Moves east of Bermuda as a tropical system. Invest 99 doesn't do a whole lot, and it actually looks like it moves into the eastern Pacific. So that massive Atlantic high pressure ridge could steer a lot of those tropical waves, really pushing that moisture further west, not able to do anything in the main part of the Atlantic, main development region. But once things go into the eastern Pacific, things could be more favorable there. And the Euro AI model showing not a whole lot of tropical activity going all the way into September 6th, except now we start seeing potentially another tropical wave coming in, and things are getting a lot more active around the Central America region. So that could be something to watch. Now, here's a look at something that is favorable, is the sea surface temperatures. We have, for Invest 90, sea surface temperatures right now around 28 degrees Celsius. That's the mid-80s. And then they get even warmer as this goes north. So it will be going into an environment that's pretty favorable in terms of sea surface temperatures. Also, the shear is actually looking pretty light on Invest 90. The moisture is pretty favorable. Now, Invest 99 is going over also warm sea surface temperatures as it goes westward, but there's a lot of wind shear and not so much moisture available for it either, which should keep it from developing into anything significant. But yeah, Invest 90 is actually going east of where Erin went, so it's not going to be affected by those cooler water temperatures over here that were a result of the strong winds of Hurricane Erin. And here's a look at the GFS model for the moisture. Not a whole lot with Invest 99, but Invest 90 could become our next tropical storm, Tropical Storm Fernand. And then what's left of Invest 99 continues westward, not much other than possibly some rain, and then that pretty much disappears. Then notice what happens. You see a lot of moisture building up around Central America and the Eastern Pacific. And so we're probably going to see a couple of tropical systems happening in the Eastern Pacific, even some very strong tropical storms or even hurricanes happening out there. But the Atlantic still looks pretty quiet going into September 7th, but we'll have to see what happens as we go towards the climatological peak of the hurricane season. The wind shear is also going to be a problem for the next couple weeks. This is what it's looking like going all the way into August 28th. We have 30 to 40 miles per hour winds, 40 to 50 miles per hour gusts, and then 60 to 70 miles per hour winds. So we have a lot of wind shear over the eastern part of the main development region and also the Caribbean. But then notice this extreme amount of wind shear because we're actually seeing a lot of cooler temperatures moving into the northern part of the U.S., the eastern part of the U.S. from a big trough in place. And so that, brings down the jet stream, which is going to be leading to a lot of shear off the east coast of the U.S. And some of that could also be affecting even the northern part of the Atlantic and the central part of the Atlantic. And there's going to be wind shear across the Caribbean as well. That continues, and the jet stream actually extends out with a lot of that shear over the central Atlantic, and then looking very sheared even going into September 2nd to September 7th. It looks very unfavorable. This is not going to be favorable for any tropical activity in the main development region if this weather pattern holds according to what the GFS is showing. And also conditions are going to be very stable with this massive Atlantic high pressure system that was happening several weeks ago, and it looks like it'll return over the next couple weeks. You can see very well above average sea level pressure over the main development region, indicating pretty stable conditions, even getting a little bit more intense going into early September. So that's going to be something to watch. That could actually shut down a lot of the tropical activity, at least temporarily. But the Climate Prediction Center is watching the main development region and the Central American Gyre region over the next couple weeks for a slight chance of development. They're not showing a lot of development expected. It's the most likely area to see development will be the Eastern Pacific going into the end of August and early September, but there is a slight chance that we do see something out there in the Atlantic. We have week 2, a 20% chance of formation in the main development region near Cape Verde and west of Cape Verde, looking at a 20% chance of formation there. Also the Eastern Pacific looking at a 20% chance of tropical cyclone formation. Then going into week 3 from September 3rd to September 9th, we're looking at an expanded 20% chance of tropical activity and also a 20% chance of tropical activity over the Western Caribbean and the southern part of the Gulf, and then a 40% chance over the Eastern Pacific. So that's where we're more likely to see tropical activity, but doesn't mean we can't see anything in the Atlantic. Just means that things aren't looking quite as favorable in the Atlantic as they were even a few days ago with Hurricane Aaron. The Eastern Pacific is going to be looking more favorable as we go over the next couple weeks, and part of that is going to be the MJO. We have right now, it's super unfavorable over the East Pacific. It's neutral over the Atlantic. That's why we're seeing some of these disturbances able to happen. But then over the next few days going to August 27th, it's going to be unfavorable over both the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic. And then notice the more favorable conditions start sliding in as we go towards September 1st. It looks neutral over the Atlantic and a little bit more favorable towards the Eastern Pacific. And then that moves in around September 6th. We have favorable conditions working their way into the Eastern Pacific. And then that continues all the way into mid-September before it looks like we start seeing some more unfavorable conditions over the eastern part of the Atlantic especially, and then that starts moving in towards the Eastern Pacific as well. But yeah, the tropics are likely to shut down as we go towards the end of August, but then as we go into the beginning of September, it looks like things could shift to being more favorable, especially over the Eastern Pacific, the Western Atlantic, and the Caribbean, specifically around that Central American Gyre region. And that's what the CFS model is indicating with this MJO forecast. That's where the most favorable rising air is expected to be in place in the tropics. That's kind of what we're looking at over the next couple weeks. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already, share the video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates on the tropics. Thanks for watching. Extreme Weather Zone out.